Chapter 1. I woke up, married to the final boss. The last thing Elliot Kale remembered from his original life was caffeine, despair, and regret. Specifically, 3 cups of cheap instant coffee, a half-highlighted sociology notebook, and a BL mystery novel, definitely not related to his syllabus, lying face down beside him. Just one chapter, he had told himself. A lie. It was 3 in the morning. His university exams were in 6 hours. His brain was fried. His eyes were burning. And yet, he had reached that arc. The arc where the villain uncle finally revealed himself. The enigma in the wheelchair. Lucien Viermont. The elegant monster, the false cripple, the puppeteer who let the main Alpha Omega couple think they had won, only to slaughter half the family and vanish with the fortune. And his husband. The trashy alpha spouse who betrayed him, stole information, tried to take his wealth, and died screaming off page. Elliot had slammed the book shut. I swear, he muttered, rubbing his face, if I ever transmigrate, let it at least be as the protagonist, or a background character, or a chair. The universe apparently heard that and chose violence. Elliot woke up choking. Not metaphorically, literally choking. Something tight constricted his throat. The air thick and heavy, flooding his lungs with a scent so sharp it made his eyes water. Pheromones. Strong, cold, overwhelming. He sucked in a breath and froze. This wasn't his bed. The ceiling above him was carved with unfamiliar sigils, dark wood gleaming faintly in candlelight. Silk sheets tangled around his legs. The room smelled expensive, old money expensive, murder aristocracy expensive. Elliot blinked. Once. Twice. Oh no. He sat up and nearly rolled straight off the bed. Careful? The voice was low, smooth, calm in a way that suggested absolute control. Elliot turned slowly, and there he was. Lucien Viermont. Pale skin, silver hair pulled back neatly, sharp eyes the color of frost-bitten steel, dressed impeccably in dark formal wear despite the late hour. And seated beside the bed, in a wheelchair, Elliot's soul left his body. No, Elliot whispered. No, no, no. This is a dream. This is stress-induced hallucination. This is my brain punishing me for reading BL instead of revising. Lucien tilted his head slightly, studying him. You're awake earlier than usual, he said. Did you have a nightmare, husband? Husband? That word hit harder than a slap. Elliot looked down. At his hands, older, stronger than his own. At the unfamiliar body. At the ornate ring on his finger, engraved with the Viermont crest. At the faint bond mark warmth on his wrist. I'm dead, Elliot said flatly. I am so incredibly dead. Lucien's brow furrowed faintly. Elliot knew that expression. He had annotated that expression mentally while reading. That was Lucien's interested look. The look he wore before someone disappeared. Panic slammed into Elliot like a truck. Think, think, think. He knew this story. This was the BL mystery novel he had binged during exams. He knew every twist, every betrayal, every death, including his own. He, Elliot, was now Aurelian Kale, the arranged alpha husband of the Enigma villain. The man who despised Lucien, the man who leaked information, the man who got greedy, the man who died horribly. I can't do this, Elliot muttered. I absolutely cannot do this. Lucien's gaze sharpened. You've been acting strange lately, he said quietly. Elliot snapped his mouth shut. Wrong answer, wrong reaction, wrong everything. He forced a laugh. Too loud, too fake. Ha ha, strange. Me? Elliot said, sitting straighter. I'm perfectly normal, just contemplating life, marriage, mortality. Lucien stared. Elliot swallowed. New plan? If the original alpha died because he was treacherous, then Elliot would be the opposite. Obedient. Helpful. Annoyingly devoted. A golden retriever in human form. My apologies, Elliot said quickly, bowing his head slightly. I didn't sleep well. I was worried about you. Lucien's fingers tightened subtly on the armrest. Worried, he repeated, Yes, of course, Elliot continued, words tumbling out. The council meeting tomorrow. The Northern Branch plotting nonsense again. I overheard something. Lucian's eyes flickered. Hook, line, sinker. Elliot internally wept with relief. He began talking. Information he shouldn't know. Details from the novel, names, future betrayals, carefully framed as rumors. Lucian listened in silence. Too much silence. By the time Elliot finished, his throat was dry and his heart was racing. Lucian finally spoke. You're either lying, he said softly, or you've become far more interesting than I believed. Elliot smiled weakly. I get that a lot? Lucien leaned back slightly, studying him as if seeing him for the first time. Elliot felt it then. The pressure. The pheromones. Not aggressive, but thick, curling around him like a warning. A claim. Lucien smiled. And Elliot, alpha menace, BL-loving university student trapped in a death flag marriage, had only one thought. I knew this plot. I knew how I died. Absolutely not. Chapter 2. Two villains holding hands. 5 months passed as if someone had flipped a page too quickly. Aurelian Kale, formerly Elliot, unfortunate university student and chronic BL reader, had survived, which, considering who his husband was, already felt like an achievement worth a medal. From the outside, nothing seemed to have changed. Lucien of Viermont remained the frail Enigma confined to a wheelchair, draped in elegance and shadows. The great murderous family still whispered behind silk sleeves. The council still schemed. Assassination attempts still bloomed like weeds. But inside the Viermont estate, the balance had shifted. Aurelian had become useful. Dangerously so. He learned quickly when to speak and when to stay silent. He attended dinners at Lucien's side, posture perfect, expression mild, playing the role of the obedient alpha spouse everyone expected him to be. And then, quietly, he poisoned destinies. A word here, a warning there, a coincidental discovery of evidence, a suggestion made with feigned innocence. Lucien noticed everything. At first, he observed with suspicion, then with interest, then with something far darker. You shouldn't know this, Lucien said one evening, fingers resting lightly on the armrest of his wheelchair as Aurelian calmly poured him tea. Aurelian didn't look up. I listen. Lucien's gaze sharpened. No, you predict. Aurelian smiled, soft and harmless. Inside, he screamed. He couldn't tell Lucien the truth, that he had read this life during exam season, half asleep and caffeinated, annotating deaths like a grocery list. So instead, he lied with confidence. And Lucien, the great puppeteer, let himself be fed new strings. Enemies began to fall. One uncle accused of embezzlement, exposed, exiled, later found dead in a river. A cousin who planned a coup, his supporters mysteriously arrested before he could act. A council elder, poisoned by his own cup. Aurelian never gave direct orders. He simply nudged the future. Lucien handled the blood. Together, they became untouchable. The servants whispered. The council trembled. And Lucien began to look at his husband differently. Not as a chained alpha forced into marriage, but as a blade. A clever, sharp, irritatingly smug blade. Aurelian was infuriating. He smiled while delivering threats disguised as politeness. He talked too much, laughed at the wrong moments, and had a habit of leaning too close when speaking, as if daring someone to object. Once, during a meeting, an elder snapped at him. You forget your place, the man sneered. Aurelian tilted his head, eyes bright. Do I? Because from where I'm standing, you're the one forgetting whose house you're bleeding in. The room went silent. Lucien's fingers curled. Slowly. Later that night, Lucien summoned him. Aurelian entered the private study cautiously, already preparing 3 escape routes in his head. Lucien sat near the window. When Aurelian closed the door, Lucien stood up and walked. Aurelian froze. Lucien moved smoothly, without hesitation, crossing the room with the grace of a predator shedding a disguise. I knew it, Aurelian breathed. Lucien stopped in front of him. You were never meant to. Aurelian laughed weakly. Congratulations, you've officially terrified me. Lucian watched him closely, searching for fear. There was fear, but there was also excitement. That amused him. From that night on, Lucian stopped pretending when they were alone. He walked freely in private corridors. He stood beside Aurelian during secret meetings. Sometimes, when they passed each other in silence, his fingers brushed Aurelian's wrist, just enough to leave warmth behind. The pheromones thickened, not aggressive, possessive. They followed Aurelian through halls, coiled around him like a silent warning to others. Mine? Aurelian noticed. He pretended not to. Your scent is intense today, Aurelian commented once, wrinkling his nose. Lucian's lips curved faintly. You haven't asked me to stop. Aurelian scoffed. I like breathing, actually. And yet, he never moved away. Lucian began to crave his presence. The sound of his voice, the sharp intelligence behind his sarcasm, the way he stood at Lucian's side as if he belonged there. It was wrong. Lucian knew it. He was not meant to love. He was meant to conquer. And yet, when Aurelian was not near, something in his chest tightened unpleasantly. Aurelian, for his part, remained painfully aware of one truth. This story always punished villains, no matter how clever, no matter how powerful. So he planned. He memorized escape routes, hoarded documents, calculated timelines. Because one day, when Lucian became the undisputed head of the family, Aurelian intended to run. He smiled at Lucian. He stood beside him. He helped him climb to the throne, all while whispering to himself, survive first, feel later. Unaware that the enigma he planned to escape from had already decided he would never be allowed to leave. Chapter 3. The Bargain. By the time Aurelian realized Lucian intended to move against the original protagonists, it was already too late to pretend this was coincidence. Rowan Hale and Milo Astor had been summoned to the Viremont estate. That alone was a death sentence in most versions of the story. Aurelian stood in the upper gallery, hands resting on the carved railing, staring down at the grand hall below. The family structure was visible in its cruelty. Blood relatives seated closer to the throne-like chair, branch families further away, and servants lining the walls like silent witnesses. At the center of it all sat Lucian, elegant, still, smiling faintly. The enigma of the Viremont family did not rule through noise or rage. He ruled through inevitability. Lucian listened as Rowan spoke, the young alpha's posture rigid but proud. Milo stood beside him, calm despite the danger, fingers brushing Rowan's sleeve in unconscious reassurance. They were exactly as Aurelian remembered. Young, righteous, dangerous only when cornered. They only become threats if harmed, Aurelian thought grimly. Lucian's fingers tapped once against the armrest. A subtle signal. Aurelian's heart dropped. That tap meant execution, immediate or eventual. That night, Aurelian didn't sleep. He paced their shared chambers, muttering calculations under his breath like a madman. If he kills them now, the backlash happens early. If they escape, the rebellion arc accelerates. If Milo dies, no, that's worse. That triggers Rowan's spiral. He stopped abruptly when the door opened. Lucian entered quietly. You're loud when you panic, Lucian remarked. Aurelian spun around. You're planning to kill them? Lucian didn't deny it. They will grow into thorns, he said calmly. I prefer removing such things early. They're children, Aurelian snapped. Lucian's gaze sharpened. They are heirs. Aurelian swallowed hard. This was it. This was the divergence point. In the original novel, this was where the alpha husband betrayed Lucian for power. Aurelian stepped forward instead and bowed. Deeply. Lucian stilled. Don't, Lucian said softly. Stand up. Aurelian didn't. Lucian, he said, voice tight, please. Silence fell heavy between them. Lucian rose from his chair, not abruptly, but smoothly, as if the world itself parted to allow it. You've never begged, Lucian observed. Aurelian laughed weakly. I've never been this desperate. Lucian studied him. You fear them? He asked. No, Aurelian said honestly. I fear what happens if you kill them. Lucian's jaw tightened. Aurelian lifted his head, meeting his gaze. I'll give you anything. Information, loyalty, myself, just leave them alone. The words hung in the air. Lucian's Enigma instincts surged violently. Anything. Aurelian realized his mistake too late. Lucian stepped closer, his pheromones thickening instantly, dark, possessive, wrapping around Aurelian like chains made of warmth and pressure. You shouldn't say things like that to me, Lucian murmured. Aurelian's knees nearly buckled. Lucian reached out and lifted Aurelian's chin with 2 fingers, forcing him to look up. I already planned to spare them, Lucian confessed quietly. Aurelian froze. What? Lucian's thumb brushed his jaw. They were bait. I wanted to see how far you would go. You're insane. Lucian smiled faintly. And yet, you offered yourself. Aurelian's soul screamed. Lucian leaned in, forehead resting against his husband's. You should have realized by now, Lucian whispered, that I am already in love with you. The words hit harder than any threat. Before Aurelian could respond, Lucian's hand slid to the nape of his neck. The marking was not violent. It was consuming. Lucian pressed his lips there, releasing his Enigma pheromones fully, not to dominate, but to bind. The world narrowed to heat, to breath, to the echo of Lucian's presence flooding Aurelian's senses. Aurelian clutched Lucian's coat, gasping. This was not a temporary mark. This was permanent. Final. When it was over, Aurelian sagged against him, trembling. Lucian held him without hesitation. Mine, Lucian whispered, voice rough. You belong to me. Aurelian's mind screamed. I regret everything, Elliot thought distantly, somewhere beneath the haze. The next morning, the entire estate knew. Lucian no longer restrained his possessiveness. Aurelian was seated at his right during meetings. His scent clung openly to Lucian's clothes. Any alpha who lingered too close received a cold, murderous stare. When a council member dared comment, Isn't this excessive? Lucian smiled. Touch him, he said pleasantly, and I will dismantle your entire bloodline. No one tested it. Rowan and Milo were quietly reassigned abroad. Alive. Aurelian watched their carriage leave from the balcony, heart pounding. Lucian came to stand behind him, arms wrapping around his waist possessively. Still planning to run? Lucian murmured. Aurelian stiffened, then relaxed slightly. Ask me again later. Lucian smiled into his shoulder. He had already decided. Chapter 4. Victory and a Secret. The war ended quietly. That was how the Veermont family preferred it. No headlines, no public scandals, no trials. Just absence. 2 months after Lucian made his final move, entire branches of the family simply disappeared. Bank accounts frozen overnight, properties seized through shell companies, private jets grounded and never used again. Some were found months later, underground, stripped of power and identity. Some were never found at all. The Veermonts were not merely aristocrats. They were billionaires who ruled markets from the shadows and mafiosi who ensured obedience with blood rather than contracts. Their wealth was old, predatory, and soaked into every institution that mattered. And Lucian Veermont now stood at the center of it. During the final family cleansing, the estate felt colder than usual. The long hall echoed with footsteps as names were read aloud. Traitors, conspirators, executioners disguised as kin. Aurelian stood beside Lucian, hands clasped tightly behind his back. This ritual was ancient. Those summoned knelt. Those forgiven lived. Those condemned were escorted away, never to return. Lucian watched without emotion. But Aurelian saw the flicker beneath it. Because before Lucian became this, he had been kind. Once, Aurelian had learned the truth in fragments. Lucian had not been born cruel. As a young Enigma, rare and brilliant, he had been groomed as a symbol, Beautiful, compliant, valuable. He trusted his family, loved them, until they realized he was dangerous. Until they tried to break him. They had sabotaged his alliances, poisoned his reputation, orchestrated the accident that crushed his legs and left him publicly crippled, locked him in rooms thick with suppressants and lies. They thought pain would tame him. Instead, it sharpened him. Lucian learned to smile while bleeding, to plan while restrained, to wait. Now, as traitors were dragged away screaming, Lucian's hands remained steady. This was not rage. This was justice, as he defined it. Aurelian felt sick, and then dizzy. The sensation struck him suddenly, sharp and unmistakable. He barely made it to his chambers before collapsing onto the bed, breath shallow, heart racing. No, he whispered. He already knew. The test confirmed it an hour later. Positive. Aurelian stared at it in horror. Pregnant. Of course he was. In the novel, Enigmas who permanently marked their mates had frighteningly high success rates. Aurelian pressed a hand to his stomach, fear flooding him. Lucian had everything now. Power, control, an empire reclaimed through blood. And Aurelian? Aurelian was a variable. A liability. If he knows. Aurelian's chest tightened. Lucian loved deeply, but obsessively, possessively. If he knew about the child, he would tighten his grip until Aurelian could no longer breathe. So Aurelian hid it. Loose clothing, suppressants, careful smiles. And then came the victory celebration. The estate glittered with light and laughter. Champagne flowed. Deals were finalized. Lucian stood at the center, elegant and victorious. A king among predators. Aurelian watched him from across the hall. He doesn't need me anymore, Aurelian told himself. Lucian had won, which meant Aurelian could finally run. That night, while the celebration still roared, Aurelian slipped away. No note, no goodbye. He vanished into the dark with nothing but forged documents and terror pounding in his chest. Miles away. Lucian froze. The bond snapped violently. Lucian staggered, hands slamming into the wall as pain tore through him. Gone. Aurelian was gone. Lucian searched immediately. He overturned cities, closed borders, summoned informants, tore through underground networks like a storm. Nothing. No pheromone trail. No bond echo. No trace. Lucian's composure fractured. Sleep abandoned him. His Enigma instability surged, territorial instincts raging without anchor. His mate had fled, taken something from him. Lucian stood in their empty chambers, breathing in fading traces of Aurelian's scent. You should have stayed, he whispered, voice breaking. The Enigma had won the world, and lost the only thing that mattered. Chapter 5, The Enigma Goes Feral. Lucian Viermont did not sleep. He hunted. From the moment the bond snapped, the world became a narrow, red-lined map with only one purpose: find his mate. He tore through continents with terrifying efficiency. Airports shut down at his command. Underground brokers vanished after failing him. Surveillance systems bent quietly to his will. Nothing. No scent, no echo, no bond pull. It was unnatural. Lucian stood alone in their chambers days later, staring at the place Aurelian used to sit while reading. Legs curled up, expression sharp, pretending not to notice Lucian watching him. The rage finally cracked something open. Lucian overturned the room. Furniture shattered, glass broke, servants fled. And then, he found it. A small white strip hidden inside a false bottom drawer. Lucian stared at it. Positive. The world went silent. Then very, very loud. The Enigma went feral. Cities felt it. The air thickened with Enigma pheromones so dense that alphas lowered their gazes instinctively. Lucian no longer pretended civility. He stalked streets personally, coat fluttering like a shadow behind him. His mate was pregnant. With his child. And alone. Lucian's control finally shattered. 3 weeks later, outside a discreet maternity clinic in a foreign city. Aurelian Kale stepped out slowly, very pregnant, tired, paler than he should have been. Lucien saw him. The world stopped. Aurelian sensed it a second too late. Luke? Lucien was there instantly, hands gripping his coat, lifting him clear off the ground. You thought you could run with my child? Lucien snarled, forehead pressing to his eyes wild. You're insane, Aurelian breathed, shaking. Yes, Lucien whispered, for you. Lucien carried him away without another word, like a predator reclaiming the most precious thing it had ever lost. Home became a fortress. Soft, beautiful, terrifying. Aurelian was never locked in a visible way. His rooms were luxurious. Gardens bloomed outside his windows. Servants obeyed him. And yet, every corridor bent back toward Lucien. Lucy saw Houston hovered. Always watching, always close, always touching, hand on waist, fingers in hair, scent wrapping Aurelian until escape felt impossible. Aurelian knew. He was caged, just not with iron. Am I allowed to breathe without permission? Aurelian snapped one day. Lucien smiled faintly. You may breathe, I'll do it with you. Aurelian groaned. That's worse. Lucien softened. He attended every checkup, memorized every detail, glared at doctors until they trembled, slept on the floor beside Aurelian's bed when nightmares came. During the birth, Lucien was undone. He held Aurelian's hand like a lifeline, whispering apologies, promises, devotion that sounded frightening and sincere. When the child finally cried, Lucien cried too. A son. Dark-haired, loud, furious. His name, Lucien said hoarsely, is Rowan Lucien Viermont Kale. Aurelian laughed weakly. You named him after the protagonist you spared. Yes, Lucien said, because mercy changed everything. 1 year later, the estate was quieter. Not safer, never safer, but warmer. Lucien ruled the empire with an iron grip. At home, he ruled nothing. Aurelian lounged on couches, sharp-tongued and smug. Rowan toddled through halls, dragging Lucien's coat like a trophy. Lucien watched them like a man who had stolen happiness and dared the universe to take it back. He was still obsessed, still territorial, still terrifying to everyone else. But when Aurelian leaned into him, sarcastic smile softening just a little, Lucien would have burned the world again, and smiled while doing it.